Well, welcome to our BPA training video. In this video, we're going to be focusing on finding patients using the patient selection tool, along with reviewing patient demographics. Now, once we sign into iPatient Care and eChiro EHR, oftentimes by default, it's going to load up this patient selection window that we see in front of us now. If you don't see that, it's easy to get to and navigate to by hovering your mouse over to that left-hand side and clicking on Open Chart. Again, that'll load up patient selection for us. But this is very powerful. It makes it simple to find our patients quickly, to open their charts, but also to access patient demographics, which we'll be focusing on here in just a couple minutes. But we wanted to draw attention to how you find patients quickly using patient selection. Of course, we have a list of patients, as you can see here, and if we were to continue to scroll down, it would continue to load more and more patients. But oftentimes the most efficient way to find a patient is using these filters up at the top in this black area. So as you probably could expect, in this patient box, we could start typing in the patient's name. We could start off with the last name if we want. For finding a patient here, we have a few with the last name of Abbott. We can actually even use the first name of a patient as well. In this case, we only have one Linda in the system, and she came right up. If we only know parts of the patient's last name and first name, perhaps, like Abbott here, we only know part of that first name. We could separate it with a comma, and then what we know of the patient's first name. So as you can see here, just knowing part of the last name and first name, we found Linda and William Abbott as well came up because of the LI in his name. But if we had many results, we could use these other filters up above to narrow things down. So for example, if we knew we were just looking for Linda, we could set the gender to female. So we can use these other filters like date of birth, email in combination, or just by themselves to quickly look for the patients we need. Now, if we ever need to clear our filters or search results, it's real easy just to navigate to the side, click on Open Chart, and we're back. Our filters are cleared and we see all patients again in our list. Well, once we found the patient that we're looking for, we can simply move our mouse over to the far right hand side under this action area. We can easily navigate to open their chart, but we're focusing again today on patient demographics, and we would use this edit button, this little pencil icon with a square, to open up patient demographics. Now, of course, that's for an existing patient. If we need to add a new patient into the system, we do have this plus button up at the top to add a new patient, and that'll load up the demographic window for starters as well. It's also worth mentioning though, but before I click on this to go into Linda Abbott's demographic area, that we can access patient demographics through other windows in the system. So for example, if we were doing some work in Linda Abbott's chart, we can still get quick access to the demographics, and oftentimes you'll find to do that is you'll look for that patient's picture. So at the top here we see Linda Abbott's picture, and we can click on this larger picture of her, and that'll bring us again right to patient demographics. So we don't always have to necessarily go start at patient selection. If we're in a different window like the chart or the patient dashboard, we'll have easy access ways to get to the demographics too. But in general, if we're looking to start opening up a patient, the quickest way will be from patient selection, finding that patient, and like I said earlier, clicking on this edit button. So we'll do that here for Linda Abbott. So once we're in the demographics area, you're going to notice it's laid out very nicely and easy for us to get around. We have some buttons at the top that will stay visible no matter where we are in patient demographics, and then we have 4 main tabs where everything is organized under. So we'll just spend a minute here real quick on these buttons at the upper right. So we have a button for billing data. That's really helpful. If I was to click that, you can see we have some options here. We can choose to not send a patient statement to the patient. We could mark them as self-pay or exempt them from claims, among other things. The next button over, we can choose the patient's pharmacy. Further over to the right, we can have a patient signature assigned to here in the system. We can set up patient notes. Of course, these are notes that may be internal to our staff. It's not going to go out on a claim or anything like that, but could be helpful for us in our interaction with the patient. For example, with Linda Abbott, they noted here the patient is hard of hearing. Further to the right, we can print their ID card, see some history, and the furthest button to the right deals with the patient portal. And it gives us a color indicating their status, but if we hover over it, it'll also tell us what's going on. The patient portal is activated in this case, but the user has not logged into it. But we can manage that patient portal for this patient by clicking on that button. Okay, so we can move on to these 4 tabs down below. We'll start off with this patient information window, and no doubt as you can see some of the fields, it should be pretty self-explanatory on how to fill much of this out. One thing we want to point out is you'll notice some fields have these red asterisks. So wherever you see that in your system, that means it's required to be able to save this patient, or especially if you're making a new patient, those fields need to be filled out before you can save. But of course, fill out this information. We have their name, date of birth, gender. Some red asterisk fields like the MRN and account number fields generally will be auto-assigned for you. So just notice that. But as we go a little bit further down, we'll notice that there's these green headings that categorize the patient information. So we have an area we can enter in their address information, and then further below we have a demographic, other information, and additional information. And much of this probably will be optional for us to fill out as we need. It's worth noting though that some of the information, especially under this demographic information category, we'll have drop-down boxes, and as we click the drop-down box, it will often show just a limited set of results, but to see the full set we can click on this magnifying glass. We'll get a much larger list that shows up, and again we can even search similar to patient selection we saw earlier, using this black bar at the top to do searching for the information or category we're looking for. So that provides a nice overview of this patient information window. It's also worth noting back at the top is where we could mark a patient as inactive using this checkbox here too. But we can move on to this next tab, the subscriber tab. We'll click on that. Here, of course, is where we can set the insurance carriers for this patient. You'll notice at the far right-hand side, we can show only active insurance carriers, which is a really nice feature. If I was to turn this off, you'll notice down below here we can see historical or inactive insurance carriers, and the active ones are still shown, and they will be shown in bold type, as you can see. If I turn that back on, you'll notice to the right we have an option to add insurance carriers. So that'll allow us to add in an additional carrier. But for a moment, I'll just go into one of these carriers so you can see what it looks like. Pretty straightforward. We can choose the type of carrier, if they're primary, secondary, or tertiary. We can load up and search for the plan name based upon the insurance carriers we've entered into the system. Of course, we'll have some address information, no doubt. And then at the bottom, we have the option of even connecting up or loading up a patient picture of their insurance card, the front and back side of that. So back out of there, that's the subscriber window. The other 2 tabs are very similar to this with just different data. So under the guarantor tab, we have the option of listing the guarantor here. So we're going to see that same plus button at the right-hand side if we want to add a guarantor, or we can click on that edit button to make any changes we need to. And then finally, under this last tab, the contacts tab, again, we can click that plus button to add a contact or view or make changes to the contacts we have loaded or connected to this patient. Okay, and then when we're done, we can hit save and close, or close if we don't need to make any changes. Well, we hope this video has provided you with a helpful overview of this patient selection tool, along with an overview of patient demographics. Thanks again for watching.